Okay, we're live. Welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. Good evening. This is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today we speak with Akseli Reho, the CEO of Clothing Plus. Clothing Plus is a developer and manufacturer of comfortable wearable sensor solutions for leading brands and sports and medical segments. And we'll let Akseli talk more about that. We met him at the ID Tech X USA 2014 at the Wearable Live 2014 kind of talks, where he talked about a topic called forgettable textile integrated sensors. So we'll let him talk a little bit more about that, but a little bit about his background. Akseli has over about 15 years experience in wearables, which if you think about the wearables area, it's really cutting edge, bleeding edge. He worked for the Finnish company Reima, which kind of had this joint venture between two universities and themselves, which they were taking the lead. And Akseli was the project manager there. And then, a few years later, maybe almost 10 years later, he did a management buyout of Clothing Plus, where he's now heads the company as the CEO, and it employs over 250 people between Finland and China, believe it or not. So they're actually doing really well, and he's probably they're famous for the polar sensor strap, which is used in all the was used a lot actually, and it's probably still used by a lot of people, where it goes around your torso to measure your heart rate and other things. So anyway, good evening, Akseli. Thanks for joining us here on Nerd Stalker Live from San Francisco.
Thanks for inviting me here.
No, like I said, we saw you at the conference, and you guys have just such a good story. I just wanted to capture it here on Nerd Stalker. So anything else you want to tell the Nerd Stalker audience about yourself that I left out?
Well, I'm a nerd. at least I used to be. So I had a big role in the early days in developing the things. So I had my hands on in the project where we developed the first polar textile heart rate sensor strap. I ran on the treadmill for tens of hours, and I used the sewing machines, and it was a really rewarding time to do that. And I think that it was the time when the story really started to fly. We were quite early with this thing, so as you said, that the majority of the people thinks that the wearables is something new, but actually in around year 2000 there was also a hype around wearables, and there was a Levi's, there was Philips, there was Nike, France Telecom. The big companies were thrilled about wearables around year 2000, and we were involved in many of those things, and sadly the bubble collapsed and it almost disappeared. But we as a Finns, we are very careful with the costs and the money, and we managed to balance the costs and the sales, and we survived. And now I'm happy to see the next time when the wearables are arriving in the masses, the history that we are having, more than 15 years on integrating textiles and electronics. Now it seems to be almost an academic story that we are having, that we have been playing around with these things and developing the test methods and technologies for a long time, and I'm really happy to see that the wearables gets a second opportunity to rise. And I hope that the work that we have done gets valued now.
Well, I think it is, Akseli, because that conference we went to, actually, and you probably were just busy on the wearable side, but I went to visit the other ones. Another technology, carbon nanotube, has been around a long time, and I caught up with a company that could actually print carbon nanotube onto a flexible substrate, so now you could have a 3D device. So I think the point here is that if you're early to the market, it's a great thing, but you never know when that market's going to suddenly bubble up and explode, right? So I think.
Yeah, and if you get woke when the bubble has already started to grow, you don't have an opportunity to do all the learnings and mistakes and build your credibility, because if you arrive just into the arising bubble, then you probably need to do a brutal and dirty guesses trying to survive. And so for us, it seems that the big companies like Adidas and Under Armour, Garmin, who are Philips, who just to name few of our customers, they value the competence that we have gained as a nerds. So I guess that plenty of venture capitalists would have killed our story for many times, for many years. But luckily, we were cash financed or operationally financed group with the low costs, and we kept gaining and gaining the competence, and now it seems to be valuable. I encourage people who has a passion on some topic to keep working on that, because I'm not sure, but I wish that one day, it can be after 5 years, after 10 years, but that technology or that interdisciplinary approach can become valuable, and then those 10-year experience and all the filed patents and all the credibility, it can be worth of millions. So
Yeah.
just to keep in mind that have fun.
Well, I think you're in the middle of your story. You're not at the end, and you're past the beginning. So, let's talk about wearables a little bit, since you guys have been in the market so long. So, at this conference, you talked about really, your company is about integrating sensors into the clothing, right, to make it really kind of a normal, less abnormal thing. The polar sensor strap was really an addition, right? You'd put the strap around you, and then you put your workout clothes on it, and then you'll just, while you're on the treadmill, like you said, and you've tested this out, you just measure your heart rate. But can you talk about kind of where you see the wearable market today, and how Clothing Plus kind of integrates with that, and how it's driving maybe maybe the forward leading edge of integrating sensors into clothing?
Sure, yeah. I think that the history of clothing, we have been trying to follow and learn how the history of clothing has evolved, and it was actually quite shocking to see that the history of clothing is really lousy. It's really long. The history is like thousands of years, and the market penetration for clothing, I would say it's 100%. So all we are using clothes, but the clothing industry is really lacking the inventions. So it was shocking to see that there has been improvements. There is a better zippers or better water repelling films, or more visible reflectors, but there is not actually a new features or functions in the clothing. So we thought that there must be a way to take the clothing to a completely new era on matter of inventions, and our approach is to see it in an interdisciplinary way. So by integrating electronics into the clothing, we open the completely new door and completely new window to add functionality into the clothing. Because the electronics industry is blooming inventions. I would say that every day there can be tens and tens new releases in electronics industry. And so by combining this blooming electronics industry with quite stable and hungry textile industry, we are able to create a masses of new inventions and new features and functions in the clothing. And of course, we can create the clothing to be better clothing by kind of making it heatable or more visible, more well ventilated. But instead of just improving the existing features, we are dreaming to add and create the whole new features. And we see that the sensing can be the next big feature, the set of features in the clothing. And I would claim that after 5 to 10 years, all the major sports underwear will at least have sensors built in. There can be also some other applications. It can be safety clothing or professional clothing, military clothing, or clothing for elderly people, clothing for people who have chronic diseases. So amount of new applications and services that can be built of the physiological data, it must be amazing. And we actually think that the wearables should be completely invisible. So there shouldn't be any wearable thing that you wear, because we are already wearing so many things. We are already wearing clothes, and the clothes, they give a really fruitful platform for sensing people, because clothes are in touch with the textile almost 24 hours per day, no matter are we doing sports or are we working or are we sleeping. Clothes are in touch with the body. I would say that they are covering 90% of the body. So clothing creates the platform to integrate the sensors and place the sensors into the most fruitful places on the body. So I think that the sensor should disappear. There should be a sensor dust in the clothing, but on top of that, there should be a really meaningful, actionable, inspiring applications that should make you learn to live with the chronic disease, or learn to work more ergonomically, or teach you to sleep better, or whatever. There's lots of good examples that what services could be created on top of the physiological data that we are able to measure in an invisible and unobtrusive way from the garments.
I mean, you mentioned during the talk, remember, and I'm going kind of back to what you were saying, is that there really hasn't been a lot of inventiveness. Like, I think you claimed the pocket probably was the last real functional change on a piece of clothing,
Yeah.
which was invented hundreds of years ago, right?
Or even thousands of years, yeah.
Thousands of years ago, right? Because people didn't want to carry a pouch anymore, right? And
Yeah.
actually, just the other day, I wore a set of clothes that didn't have any pockets, and I was just totally lost. But that's another story. But anyway, but I think what you're saying now is that we could be entering a new world of wearables that could be life-changing for a lot of people, right? Is what you're saying, right? Because there's sensors and data now that could be used in conjunction with a lot of things to give you something that you've never had before, right?
Yeah. Correct. It opens a completely new window. It opens the completely new data access to the physiological information. It hasn't been available before. It has been available for the doctors or some laboratory environment researchers, but having the same amount of data from your everyday living should open the big data and data analytic guys an enormous amount of information to tell the users some meaningful information from themselves, because you can't improve what you can't measure. So if you are able to measure yourself, you can improve yourself. And it's not only sports. It can be being better with your daily habits, or get motivation to live more healthier, or do more ergonomic decisions when you are working in the office. Or it can be a really big number of applications that makes the difference when you can get the credible and validated data out of yourself. So it's not a statistic information that you should stand straight, or you should focus on ergonomics. It's a too generic information. I don't get motivated on that. But if somebody would, if the application would tell the information from myself that I'm doing something wrong and you should do a bit differently, that your back pain probability would increase, like with 50% if I would stand or sit in more ergonomic position, or it could tell me that I could be so much brighter or more fresh in the morning if I don't do the habits in the night, like reading my iPad in the bed, or it could teach me to live better and live more happier and longer life, for example.
Yeah, I had a question for you. Going back to sensors that you're integrating, I always think of sensors are, to the polar thing, more tactile sensors, right? Something that's actually touching the body. I mean, can you go into, for our audience, like other sensors that could be integrated, and I mean, you could say anything. I don't know. I'm just very curious about what you just said about, uh, measuring certain habitual things about your body or other things that I, I could imagine there could be many sensors that you could put into the clothing, right?
Yeah, and it's all about that. So in Clothing Plus, we have developed technologies to integrate almost whatever sensors into the cloth. It can be microphones to listen the sounds from the body, listen the sounds from the heart, or sounds from the joints. It can be an accelerometers to measure the movement or postures. It can be an optical sensors to do analysis from your tissues or blood. It can be temperature sensing. It can be a bioimpedance sensing to get an information from how hydrated you are. It can be almost whatever. So we in Clothing Plus, we have developed a platform on top of which we can place almost whatever existing sensor, silicon sensor, or whatever sensor in the world. And that should be the brief for the designers, that please let us know what you wanna know, and then we just choose the set of sensors and do the sensor fusion to serve the consumer with the valuable information for them.
I mean, that's very true, right? I mean, in science, what you normally do, you start with a hypothesis, right? You start that I want to do this, or it would be great if I could know how this would work, right?
Yeah.
And then you design a set of experiments or apparatus around that, right? And you're kind of taking that same approach with Clothing Plus, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I it just baffles my mind the data you could get out of this if you're saying that you can integrate a temperature sensor or a optical sensor or a audio sound sensor onto the clothing in key areas so you can learn more about yourself. Most of the time you had to go into a lab in under probably pretty ideal circumstances attached to wires, right?
Yeah.
To do what you're talking about, right? And now you're saying that, oh, if you have a phone, which is a pretty high-powered computing device, and maybe the cloud, you could do a lot more now, right?
Yeah, I think that the sensor technology itself, it has developed a lot. They are consuming power much less than they used to do. They are quite cheap. That connectivity to collect the information from your body and delivering that almost wherever you want, that's solved. So it's actually it's a matter of applications. It's a matter of service. It's about identifying what information and things people would love to learn from themselves, and all the rest is just building with the Legos the needed set of sensors. So it's already quite straightforward to do that.
Wow. Wow, that's exciting. I mean, now at Clothing Plus, are you solving not only integrating the sensors, but creating a system? It sounds like for the manufacturer that works with you to solve a problem, right?
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I know at Clothing Plus you're working with the sensor technology to solve whatever problem that your partner wants you to solve, right? But are you solving it only at the system level as well in the creation of these sensors in clothing and devices that would take that data and then uh, uh, analyze and do something with that data?
Clothing Plus, we are focused on integrating sensors into the textile. We want to make them washable, recyclable, uh, unobtrusive, stylish looking, and we deliver that data to the companies who takes care of the whole system level
I see.
engineering.
I see.
So that's not our part of the equation,
I see.
and we think that focusing on this, we're solving already so many problems, and we must have a good focus on our operations.
Right, right. No, that makes sense. Well, let's shift a little bit to business since you're the CEO. And in
Yeah.
2008, you led, or you guys did a management buyout from the company that originally kind of started this kind of wearables project with you guys. Can you tell us more about that experience? Because that seems pretty interesting to me. It was 2008, at least here in the United States. That was kind of the middle of the recession or the start of the recession. So.
Yeah, that's one interesting adventure that we have had, and the roots for that MBO is that our mother company, a traditional kids clothing company in Finland called Reima, they faced an ownership change situation. So their new owners arrived in, and the new owners said to management and the previous owners that they are not keen on getting their hands into the wearable tech business. They just want to buy and acquire a kids clothing brand. And it almost looked that this story could have been destroyed during that arrangement, and we got a bit shocked because we already had worked more than 10 years with this story, and we created some IP, we created some customer relationships. We started to feel that this starts to fly. We felt that we didn't have any numbers behind that story, and we the management team we made a decision that we have to fight. We can't let them the bankers to destroy the story, and we found few angels, few venture kind of business angels to help us to do the operation, because we didn't have an experience on doing these deals, and we didn't have all the needed money to do it. So we found the three angels, who good angels had arrived into the picture and helped us to do the MBO, and it was really in middle of the financial crisis, and it was a big thing that we did, and I personally invested more in this story that I invested in my house.
Wow.
Which puts this in the perspective that yeah, it was a big decision, but it showed that in this story, and now when we are looking back in 2014 to 2008, we did absolutely right decision. So it's so clear that the risk taking on those days was wise. But on the other hand, when we did an MBO, it made us kind of to work even more hard. We wanted to be proud what we made, the decision what we made, and there was no room for the failure. Especially in Finland, where in Finland when you go into the bankruptcy with your company, it will be almost like a criminal record. So there is no chance that you can do it again. So it's unfair in Finland. But if you fail, you are the failure, and you don't have another option.
Oh my
It's a big
gosh.
difference in the US.
Boy, that's kind of like being on the edge of a cliff, right?
But it made us to work hard. Yeah,
Boy,
we
I'd
had.
say that's motivation.
It's a part of the motivation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like having a gun to your head almost, but
Oh, so yeah, but yeah, we survived. At the moment, we are clearly operationally funded company. We're growing quite fast. Actually, today we already have more than 300 employees. So we have hired some tens of more employees, and the growth rate of the company, at least from the Finnish perspective, it's a really good. So yeah, now it feels good.
hey, I got a question for you. Now, what I understand now, oh no, so now you're over 300, so now, and they're split between China and Finland, right?
Yeah,
So how is it to run a multinational company, and multicultural company? So I mean, when you say multinational, it means multicultural. I
yeah,
mean, that's a fascinating thing to me because we work in a lot of ways on the app side with developers in different countries, but you're really kind of supplying. If it's China, that's probably where a lot of the clothing is made, right?
yeah. It's a of course it's a challenge, but first of all, I have to say that I'm lucky because in my management team there are the guys who are thrilled uh, about to make the factory work, and that's not my passion. And my passion is to work with the customers and with the technology. So we have a pretty good roles. They run the factory and I run the sales and the, the new ideas with the customers. So I don't have to run there. I visit the factory few times per year to show my face there and tell them that the future looks even more bright than it has been, and kind of trying to put them into the picture. And of course the factory management, they travel to us a few times per year. So it's that's the interface how I see it. But of course there is lots of daily activities, lots of systems, lots of specification ramp ups. For example, every time that we introduce a new product into the production line, a group of engineers from Finland, they will travel to China for roughly 3-4 weeks, and they take care that the product lands on the production line smoothly. And yeah, of course, it's a big thing, especially in the environment where we are combining textiles and electronics. So it's not about just bringing some new product there, but it's always bringing some new technologies and new challenges. So the factory that we are having in China, it's quite unique. So we have adopted a lot of technologies from the electronics industry and from plastics industry and also from textile industry. We put everything into the same building, so we are able to serve the customers with the products that respect the rules from the electronics industry, but also the rules from the textile industry. So it has been also a challenge. It has been also an interesting adventure to build the factory where we can do millions of products per year and satisfy the customers like Adidas and Garmin and Under Armour, who are very demanding regarding the quality and functionality and safety and prices and everything. So it's a multicultural challenge also in technological wise. So we are putting different production cultures into the same picture.
No, I mean, I could understand that, Akseli, because I think, when I'm thinking about this, you're creating a factory that does both textile and electronics, as you say, and the issue I see is also just ramping it up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably, I mean, I come from a world that dealt with small pilot runs, kind of just to prove the proof of concept of the manufacturing, and then someone pushes this button somewhere and it goes into mass production. And
Yeah.
I think it sounds very similar to what you're doing there at Clothing Plus.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a. Of course, it keeps us alive. It keeps us kind of. We see that there is a new and new ways to do it, and this world is not even close to the readiness. So this is an inspiring environment to work.
Yeah. No, I could understand. It sounds exciting from my end here, just listening to you. But anyway, I mean, I guess I'll close out the interview. I mean, I could probably talk to you about a few more hours, but that wouldn't be fair to our audience or
Yeah.
people. But can you tell people how to learn more about Clothing Plus and maybe get a hold of you as well?
Uh, yeah. There is a. Of course, we have the website. Uh, we have a more and more stronger presence in US. I will be spending more time here. We will open the and some site here, probably in the East Coast first, and of course from the web. Actually, just a few days ago, there was in Engadget there was a short news about uh, what Clothing Plus has done, and one one reference and a great story for the nerds like me is that we did a sports bra, a really stylish, nice sports bra with the Victoria's Secret with the integrated sensors, and that was a big victory for the nerd like me
Oh,
to make that
absolutely.
happen. Yeah.
That's exciting, man. That's mainstream in my mind.
Yeah,
Victoria's
yeah,
Secret.
that's a good sign. It shows that the companies are really are arriving into this industry when the companies like Victoria's Secret is doing a successful launch.
Yeah, absolutely. You should be very proud of that. So, well,
Thanks.
anyway, yeah, I appreciate that and appreciate your time. I know you've been in the United States for 5 weeks now, and you're probably itching to go back to Finland after you get some business done. So I'll let you get going. Um, but anyway, thank you. I appreciate sharing both the business and the technology talk with us here at NerdStalker. So anyway, that was Akseli Reho, CEO of Clothing Plus, producing wearable sensors and products into clothing seamlessly. So this is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the NerdStalker Media Network, where you believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there. Thanks again, Akseli, and have a safe trip back to Finland.
Thank you, and have a nice holidays.
All right.